Hi, and welcome to Meet the Experts, Mail and More, a webinar series designed to address the challenges facing the print and mail industry. Each month, we'll have an expert share their insights and knowledge on the ways that you can be successful. Attendees are muted during this webinar, so please use the Q&A box for any questions. Also, a recording of this webinar will be made available to all registrants. Leaps in technology, the pandemic, hybrid work environments have drastically changed the print and mail industry. How we manage, how we buy, and how we sell are forever altered. The skills and the staff needed to be successful in this environment has changed as well. So today we're going to be talking with Alexis Nicoletta, executive recruiter at PrintLink. Alexis will talk about the changes she's seeing and share the ways successful people and organizations are navigating the changes. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here today.
So, Alexis, I know your background. I know your story. Can you share how did you get here and your background in the industry?
Absolutely. So I am one of the lucky ones who earned a degree in printing. So that's where my start in the industry began, and I started out in a trade shop making proofs back in the day. And then I progressed into the printing industry, moving down to Atlanta from the Chicago area where I originally started, and earned my wings through estimating and eventually purchasing into sales and for a commercial printer. At the time when digital printing started to become popular, I became bored. I wanted to get into something more exciting. And so I got into digital print as it related to variable print. And that led into my direct mail marketing experience. So that was a whole new adventure, getting into mail tracking, understanding the dynamics of ROI for a direct mail piece. I circled back, was able to become integral in the hardware and software sales of the industry. And then also was able to dabble in representing a major paper mill for a few years.
Wow.
So then I came back full circle, back into the printing industry as business development director. And that's when PrintLink found me.
Excellent. So you've been on the operations side, you've been on the sales side, you've been on the software side, you've been on the equipment side. I don't know if there's any more sides. So let's kind of get in and tap into that knowledge. And I'd like to talk about different roles in the industry and the challenges.
Mhm.
So when you think about the changes in the industry, what are the biggest ones that are impacting sales roles?
Well, I believe that there's been a transformation for sure on the digital side. So on the sales side, as you're going through your career, those who are on the webinar today in the sales role, if you've been in the industry for a while, your message has changed. You've gone from speaking about run lengths, quantities, substrates you're printing on to how specific do you want to get with this individual piece, down to the individual piece. So that does require digital information, data, things like that. So your speech as a salesperson has had to evolve. And if you're not evolving, you need to. There's plenty of resources out there for education on your own. Hopefully your organization, as it has evolved with equipment, et cetera, is providing those platforms as well for you to learn. But it is important for a salesperson, if you've been out of the industry or you've been segmented into part of the industry at this point, that you elevate your education and your speak to match where you want to go. Another area is the utilization of the data analytics. So data is king now, and it is very important, not only as a professional, but as an individual in the world. I mean, you have to know who you're speaking with and who you're dealing with. So you do your research on your own, correct? You go into LinkedIn, you look at backgrounds on folks, just like you do as you research a company before you go in on a sales call. All of that data is available, and how companies use that data is important as well.
It's interesting you bring up data because just this morning I was on a webinar by the OIG about AI in the postal sector, and it was all about how they're using AI to manage data. So that's the world we live in.
Yes.
So that's the sales folks what they need to know. What are the biggest challenges facing those people who are in management roles?
So as a manager, first of all, I take my hat off to you because a leader in this industry right now has their hands full. And it's very important now to realize that measuring and assessing your organization is critical. It used to be that we'd have an annual meeting, right? You get to the year, the Q4, and you'd start saying, okay, now we have to analyze what we've done. Let's look year over year. How do we compare to last year's numbers? And how are we going to move forward? Where do we need to expand? Where do we need to add? Where do we need to adjust? Now it's quarterly, down to monthly, down to weekly. People are adjusting. So it's very important to understand what's going to work best for your organization, not only from a sales standpoint, but also from an capital investment standpoint. Are you utilizing your equipment the way you need to? Do you have the right people working the equipment and selling the capabilities as you should?
Can you talk a little bit about where customer service comes into this?
Sure. Oh, goodness. Okay. If I have three hats off, one's going to go to customer service now, because customer service, I believe, is integral to any company. Whoever you consider to be customer service in your organization, that person is your point person. They're dealing internal as well as external customers, and they're facing issues every day to execute what the organization is attempting to be successful in the organization, in the industry. And what's happening is people are receiving phone calls through customer service, they're receiving emails, they're receiving texts, they're receiving communications however they can. They have to manage that information, deal with customers in a proper way to give them the right information, and then they have to turn around and go into the plant and make it happen. Communicate with your folks on the floor, communicate with salespeople. What's happened with customer service is sometimes that's the area that gets cut. We have a lot of weight being put on the salesperson, a lot of weight being put on mid-management to handle these very important details that are happening every day.
So an area where a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about is the aging workforce. When I started the Berkshire Company 24 years ago, it was because I was young and thought I knew what I was doing, right? Now I'm older, but so are many of the people I were peers with 25 years ago. So
Sure.
can you talk about the impact of the aging workforce on our industry?
Yes, this is a great subject. Thank you for bringing it up. So we have an aging workforce. Let's just say they're later in their career. Okay, so they have
Not at my end. I'm not at the end of my career. Not yet.
No, we're not adding the word end. So we have experienced folks out there, right? These folks have gone through a lot of different levels of the industry. Some of them are coming into the industry mid-path, so they're not necessarily born and raised in the industry, but they have skill sets that are applicable to what we do every day. So when organizations are looking to expand their leadership or looking for folks who perhaps are mid-career path, they want to add somebody who's not going to be retiring or perhaps leaving the organization because of the end of their career path, maybe within 5 years, 10 years. Now, what's interesting about this is those folks who are later in their career have lots of experience. And if your organization is changing rapidly and you're looking for somebody to fill a slot that is going to execute on day one what the mission is for that organization, why not put somebody in there who can do it? It's great to hire somebody who might grow into the role, but to me, that's considered a succession plan. So if you bring somebody in who's more capable at the moment to take the ball and run, and then in 2-3 years, bring in somebody who can be then a successor to that role. And then you have a backup plan. You have somebody in place to go ahead and who has been mirroring that role. Sometimes people look at their capital investments, right? So we just got back from Printing United, right?
Yep.
Lots of beautiful equipment. I think it's beautiful. High-end technology, lots of opportunity there. So everybody's excited, they have a piece of equipment on their floor, but goodness, the technology today. So their equipment could be 2-3 years old, but to stay relevant in the industry and be ahead of your competitors, or even shoulder to shoulder with your competitors, you have to invest in this new technology. Well, many times people look at their organization and go, well, we need that. We need to get that. Well, their old equipment's only 2-3 years old, but they're watching it go out the back door and they're putting in a new piece of. Why don't you look at your people the same way? Look at who you can be bringing in every 2-3 years to keep revolving that knowledge that you have in your organization and replace it.
And it's funny because you bring up Printing United, and one of the things I saw on the floor, my business partner Lois and I were talking about this, where people looking for solutions because the experienced tradespeople, right, are those people who may in 2 to 5 years decide they don't want to do it anymore. So how do I automate that, right? And that will allow me to get somebody who may not be a tradesperson but can do that. And the other thing that you talked about with the every 2 to 3 years, when I was in my 20s and 30s, 2 to 3 years was the average time I stayed in a job. And that is not, a generational that, millennials are different than those of us who are older. It's that people in their 20s and 30s are constantly looking for what's the next thing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great point. I mean, it's very true. And that is a fact. I mean, 36 months goes by so quickly, but people who are looking to change their career and grow in their career as quickly as possible, they're looking.
So with those challenges, how should leaders, and when I say leaders here, I mean both business owners, middle managers, corporate executives, what do they do to prepare for those changes?
Well, I think this is $1 million question, right? How do you grow? How do you adjust for those changes? And I say utilize your resources. As a leader in the organization, as an owner, as a CEO, whatever your role is in the organization, that should be your focus. So bring in professionals who understand the industry, who understand the role of finding people for you.
It's interesting. You and I were talking about this the other day about, the roles of consultants, and you brought up about having analysts, something that we didn't always think about in our industry. Can you talk about the value of adding an analyst?
Yeah, this is an great example on this, because analyst is becoming a new title that in our industry, just in general print, wasn't always a placeholder, right? So now leaders are finding out in organizations to have an analyst on staff who can embrace what the business is, understand where the business wants to go, and can look at the numbers and analyze the data based on the metrics that are being gathered throughout the week, throughout the month, and actually pull together that reporting and put their human element on it. So have those conversations. The AI is so integral into our industry right now, and it's so exciting. But our industry is still a human industry. and we still need that human impact utilizing that information. But yes, analysts are, it's exciting too, because now we're delving into a whole new pool of people.
I was talking with a person you know well, Tom Leon from Wellmark, and one of his employees took it upon themselves to teach themselves SQL. And they then used the data that they were capturing through return mail. Because remember, we're still a physical, as you said, we're still people, we're also still very physical, and started capturing different data points about return mail to drive it down lower and lower. Now that person is moving into a new role at Wellmark, and Tom can no longer just hire someone to deal with return mail. He has to hire someone with analytical skills, right? We
Yeah.
are a data-driven industry. Yes, we're digital print. Yes, we're offset print. Yes, we're addresses. You all know how much I love addresses, but we are a data-driven industry, and you need to know about it.
Yes.
So we've talked about managers, we've talked about sales. What about the individual? How should the people on this call who are thinking about moving, right? How do they prepare themselves to be considered for roles in this new environment?
Okay. So as an individual, you have to understand you are your brand. And nobody is going to care more about your brand than you. At least that's the way it should be. So if it is your brand, you want to make sure that you're representing who you are in the best light possible. So LinkedIn definitely, as a professional, is your best bet. You need to make sure that your profile is up to date, make sure that your photo's up to date. It's okay if you're later in your career and you still have your photo from when you were at your first job, that's not going to work. You want to make sure that somebody knows when they introduce themselves on a Zoom call, which we all know is popular now, or Teams, anything that you use online. You want to know that when you turn that camera on, you're going to be seeing the person that you're expecting, and be proud of it. It's okay. So on your LinkedIn profile, make sure that it's up to date, that you have relatable information on there that speaks to who you are today. Many times we set it and forget it. We go ahead and put the information in and we just let it sit there and simmer. No, we've been talking this entire webinar about today. We have to look at what we are today. So as an individual, make sure that your profile, your information is accurate, because people are looking at you, whether you want it to know it or not. If you want to be seen, LinkedIn is where they're looking at you. And the other thing is your resume. Make sure you keep up with it. I know it's not fun. It's like homework, but you have to pull it back out and make sure that all the information is accurate. People do check resumes and do check on dates and things like that. It is a thing. Now, people use AI, right? Or ChatGPT to go ahead and build the resume. That's fine. It's a starting point. Put your spin on it. Make it yours. Because when people speak with you, they want to make sure that they're speaking to you and that you're matching what you're saying. Now, tie those two together. LinkedIn and your resume need to align. They need to be similar and same information. Okay. So the other thing is that I'd like to just add to this is a resume is similar to a driver's license or a passport. You still need a resume to submit because you can't get through the airport without showing your license or showing your passport. TSA doesn't like that. So resume is the same way. Go ahead and get it ready to present and then get ready to speak to it.
And I think that if you don't mind me just sticking with that, I know this is a little bit off the topic, but about the self-brand and LinkedIn is to remember that everybody's going to see them.
Correct.
We're right in the middle of an election season, and I see some posts that, again, everybody has the right to say what they want, right? I mean, First Amendment, you and I, big believers in that. However, do you want your prospective boss to see that? And that is your call, but think about that when you post. Also think about that about what you share personally. There's There's been a bit more, a bigger dip into the personal side on LinkedIn, but you have to consider how personal do you want to be, because again, the future employer is going to see that.
Yes, absolutely.
And something else that you and I had talked about was that we were talking about replacing folks. However, for many people on this call, it's a competitive market, right?
It's very competitive. It's competitive in all angles. We have folks who are wanting to get into the industry because they've been perhaps in another part of the industry. They've been designers or they've been in marketing, and now they want to get into sales. You have a lot of companies who have been acquired or they've merged. And so there's duplication of roles within an organization, and good people are having to find new places to be. And so you have competition not only from the new people coming out of school who are ready to hit the market, but you also have those who have lots of experience. So you need to stand out.
And that's really important to remember, is how are you going to stand out? And to everybody who's on this call, that's why we're doing these webinars, to help you find ways to stand out. So as we get into final thoughts, I started this by explaining that you're an executive recruiter with PrintLink. Can you explain to the audience what's PrintLink and why should they consider that?
Sure. PrintLink, recruiters who are actually specific to the industry. Now that's different, okay? That's many recruiting agencies have a focus across the board on perhaps many different industries. What makes us special is that we focus on the industry. And as such, all the recruiters on the team come from the industry. We have walked the walk. So we're not experts in all areas. It's, as you know, that's impossible. But we have walked the walk. We have been in the printing plants. We have been in the packaging plants. We've watched how paper is manufactured. We've been on all different angles of it. So when you have a conversation with a recruiter at PrintLink, you're going to talk the language with us, and we're going to know. So that's important, because we'll know from a client standpoint, we'll be able to speak to our clients and say, who do you really want to find? What really is this role about? And where are you looking for it to go? And what's the culture? And then when we speak with the candidate, we'll ask those similar questions. Where have you been? Where do you want to go? And what kind of culture do you like to be in? What kind of environment? What kind of support? Things like that. So we get into the weeds industry-wise.
Great. And just a word to any of the folks on here who are hiring managers, you have to be able to say, where do you want the company to go? Because that's how you're going to find the people to take you there. So we don't have any questions. I guess we're kind of towards the end here. If anybody does have a question, if you could pop it in the Q&A box, I'll give that just a second. While we're doing that, if you do want to connect with Alexis or myself, well, you obviously got the email from me, we're connected, but Alexis, you're on LinkedIn at Alexis Nicoletta, and it's very simple, printlink.com. That's a pretty easy URL to remember. And we have no more questions. So I really want to thank you, Alexis. I appreciate your time with us. Oh, someone just added something. I've been working on the topic of culture and culture fit.
Culture
any
add over
thoughts?
culture fit.
Yeah, so the words, are they bringing something new, or do they fit in?
So I never like to ask a question of a question, but I think that's a question to ask. What do you desire? Do you want somebody who's going to expand your culture in a new direction, or do you want somebody who's going to fit into the culture? So I think that's probably a split question. I think culture fit is, in my heart, number one. I think you have to have a foot on the dock before you can put a foot in the boat. And if you have somebody who's willing to grow your business and you're excited about that, I think that's wonderful. And that has to have buy-in from the entire organization. So really, I think this is a very personal note here, is that before you seek new people for your team, make sure that as an organization, as a leadership team, you're in agreement as to that direction as well.
Excellent. Thank you again, Alexis. Thank you to all of our attendees. As I said, this recording we made available probably sometime tomorrow to make sure everything works correctly. And we look forward to seeing you all next month on another episode of Meet the Experts, Mail, and More. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.